6 people were murdered in that house.
I've been to a lot of crime scenes. I've never seen anything like this.
5 people were driven out of there 28 days after they lived there. Would you live in that house?
The house has never been haunted. It isn't haunted today. And the Lutzes, they have my congratulations. They made a very successful commercial venture, and they pulled the wool over the public's eyes.
It's real easy to call something a hoax. I wish it was. It's not.
In the winter of 1975, the Lutz family toured a gorgeous 5-bedroom home on Long Island. The house was suspiciously priced at $80,000 despite having a pool, a boathouse, and access to a canal. It was there that they learned that a grisly murder had taken place there only a year prior.
We first saw the house in the fall of 1975. Went over with the broker. She said, I wanted to show you what the other half of Amityville lived like.
The house at 112 Ocean Avenue had once belonged to the DeFeo family, and on November 13th, 1974, Ronnie DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family while they slept in the home.
There's one element in the usual mass murder story which seems to be missing from this case. There's no sense of fear in this community, no feeling of a mass murderer on the loose. People we talked to seem to feel that whatever was the motive for this crime, it had something to do with the family. It's not something that's going to return to bother anyone else. In Amityville, Long Island, Phil Barno, News Center 4.
He was subsequently sentenced to 6 sentences of 25 years to life for the crime. Now, perhaps the strangest part about the murder case is that nobody heard the shots from the .35 caliber Marlin that DeFeo used to gun down his family.
Caliber rifles, a loud firearm. They don't make silencers for rifles like this. Nobody heard a single shot.
To this day, no one is certain how Ronald DeFeo Jr. killed his parents, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters, and nobody heard a thing how none of them even woke up. Maybe they were drugged. No, that proved not to be true.
The next theory was that, well, he had a silencer on it. That theory didn't hold water. There would be some fragments of the silencer that would have been left on the crime scene.
DeFeo has changed his version of events many times over the years. However, one story that he consistently tells is that his sister Dawn was the second shooter, and that he ended up killing her in self-defense.
This is the truth. She went out to my bedroom. I don't know what made her grab that. She grabbed the .35 caliber Marlin. She loaded it up.
And despite knowing of the property's macabre story, George Lutz and his family decided that the offer was too perfect to pass up, and they moved into the home in December of 1975.
We discussed it among the 5 of us, and there was no problem. It was, it was unfortunate that that had happened there. It was reflected in the price, of course. We weren't superstitious, thinking that there was anything wrong.
The day the family moved into the Amityville house, George Lutz called a priest to bless the house as a precaution given the home's dodgy history. And according to George, an unseen entity slapped the priest in the face during the service and told him to get out. Despite this horrifying event, the family proceeded with the move-in.
It wasn't until much later that we learned what it was that had happened to him while he was doing it. He did stop us before leaving and say to us that not to spend too much time in that sewing room. For some reason, he felt uncomfortable there.
In the weeks that followed, the Lutz family allegedly began experiencing a range of chilling paranormal phenomena.
Just moving into the house was fine. It's a lovely house, and we enjoyed moving in. Within a week, Kathy's hand had been touched by something that we discussed and couldn't explain. It was just something unseen.
The family kept the home's furnace burning day and night to keep the space warm, but to no avail.
We had extreme fluctuations in the heat, between 40 and 50 degree fluctuations. 3 times the serviceman came in. One time he was there, he heard the furnace functioning, and yet there was no heat within the house. The temperature was at 40, and yet thermostat read 80.
George also claimed that he found a green slime-like substance oozing from the walls.
It was more of a gelatin kind of substance that we thought the children had somehow mixed something up and spilled it around the house. The next time it happened, the kids were at school, and there was just no way to explain how it got there.
He also claimed that he woke up early every night at around 3:15 a.m., right around the time that the murders supposedly took place. However, on one such occasion, he also heard the children's bed slamming up and down on the floor while he lay helpless in his own bed, held in place by some unseen force.
I'm laying in bed. I'm unable to get up. There's no pressure on me. There's no force holding me down. I'm unable to move. I can hear my children's beds overhead of me slamming up and down on the floor. And I can't get up to help them.
How long did that last?
All night.
And you couldn't move?
No.
And the morning after this alleged incident, George Lutz and the rest of his family abandoned the home, not even bothering to empty the refrigerator or closets, and they had only lived in the house for 28 days.
We left to the house because the house became uninhabitable. As far as we were concerned, there was no reason to stay there anymore. There were too many things happening too often and confronting us constantly.
The Lutz story swiftly blew up in pop culture, and in 1976, the house was investigated by famed and controversial ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren.
There's one thing that I can say about the Amityville case, that again, on a scale of 1 to 10, that could be a 12. And I would never want to go into another house like that.
As I stood in the middle of that room and looked around, I said, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
In 1977, author Jay Anson wrote a book based on the Lutz's experience called The Amityville Horror, where Anson reportedly collected about 45 hours of tape-recorded accounts from the Lutz family to build the narrative.
But those specific events are not something that we try to sit down and explain to anyone else. That's why the book was done, so that's not something that we have to go through anymore.
The book was adapted into an immensely popular 1979 film called The Amityville Horror, starring James Brolin as George Lutz.
I'm coming apart! Oh, Mother of God, I'm coming apart!
28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house, they were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville Horror.
However, with the film's success came several doubts about the story's validity.
I can't say that looking over the story, I believe the book as it's presented totally.
In the September 1979 edition of People magazine, William Weber, the defense attorney for Ronnie DeFeo Jr., claimed that he and George Lutz once sat down and fabricated the whole Amityville Horror story.
I don't remember the number of bottles of wine that we had, but it certainly was more than 4. And toward the end, we were creating ideas. Creating. In other words, if you were talking about the green slime, well, why couldn't it have come from a demonic source?
I had never met Bill Weber before, but he knew that he was there to talk about the details revealing the hoax, because he was now in a legal situation where the monies accrued from the film and the book, first the book, then the film, obviously went to the Lutzes. But apparently the contracts, the legal work was not written in all of the detail it should have been. And so Weber was left in the cold, so to speak, and wanted his part of what he thought he had coming to him.
There does seem to be a lot of inconsistencies with regards to the Lutz's story. One being that it was stated in Jay Anson's book that they called the police numerous times with regards to the paranormal happenings that happened at the house. However, police records showed that no calls were made and that they never visited the house once during the 28 days.
It was phony from the beginning. I didn't know Weber's connection with it yet. I mean, that didn't come out till later. You know, the circulation of that book, it was tremendous. I mean, I don't know how Prentice Hall must have made a hell of a lot of money on that.
Another inconsistency in the book was that the Lutzes supposedly found hoof prints in the snow by their house. However, Amityville weather records show that it didn't snow during that time.
I don't believe there were any ghosts in that house. I don't think there ever were. I know there's not any there now.
George Lutz also states that he consulted with the Amityville Historical Society and that they told him that the house was built on a spot where the Shinnecock Indians used to corral their sick and dying members, and that the spot was basically infested with demons. However, a curator at the Amityville Historical Society has since stated that the Shinnecock Indians never lived anywhere near Amityville.
I got the book on a lark just to see what it was like, and I thought it was very funny. It all sounds phony to me.
George Lutz also claimed to have seen a demonic pig-like creature with red eyes staring at him through one of the windows. However, this has also been explained away as it was part of the conversation which he had, or which they had, with William Weber in order to basically enhance book sales.
There was pig's eyes in a window or something. And that pig's eyes was Rufus's cat. I mentioned Rufus Isle next door.
Butch DeFeo hated that cat, and he would say, "That cat is a fat pig. Get that cat off of my house. That fat pig is looking in my window again." And that was told from Weber to the Lutzes, and they conspired together to decide that this was going to be Jody the demon pig.
They had a cat that used to sit in the window, and that's what the pig's eyes was Rufus's cat. It was just a bunch of bull.
And similarly to the green slime that George Lutz claimed to have seen oozing from the walls, this came from crime scene photos that Weber had actually shown them, which basically depicted fingerprint residue left from the investigation of the DeFeo crime scene. Stephen Kaplan, a South-South vampirologist and ghost hunter, was also approached by George Lutz to investigate the house. However, their relationship soured considerably after Kaplan stated that he would expose any fraud that was found. And this led to the Lutzes not wanting to work with him anymore, and Kaplan subsequently ended up publishing a book called The Amityville Horror Conspiracy in 1995.
And I said to George Lutz at the time, "I'm going to investigate. My fee is zero, because if you're lying, I'm going to verbally rip you apart. But Lord, help you if you're lying to me, because I don't like lies. My time is precious. I'm going to waste it with garbage."
With regards to other paranormal aspects pertaining to the house, there was also the famous Gost Boy photograph, which actually turned out to be an investigator called Paul Bartz who was assisting the Warrens, and that the effect of the eyes was actually due to infrared from the film.
The Amityville Horror, a case that the Warrens thought was genuine, it turned out to be a blatant hoax.
Nobody ever proved that.
Amityville was everything you ever heard about and then some. It was some of this and some of that, and a lot of demonic stuff thrown in, and even motifs that seemed to have been more or less stolen from the movie Exorcist, like floating up in the air off the bed. And so it just looked phony from the get-go.
However, George and Kathy Lutz insisted that they were telling the truth about the hauntings they allegedly experienced at the Amityville house, even going so far as to take a polygraph test.
Well, one of the things we're very happy with is 4 weeks ago, both of us were subjects of a polygraph test.
Right.
It was given by Chris Gugas and Michael Rice. And we both passed with flying colors.
The results of the polygraph did not indicate deception, and the family continued to speak about their experience for years, inspiring several more films and television shows. George Lutz also frequently gave interviews and even appeared in several documentaries about the alleged haunting, which is pretty ironic since he also stated in an interview that the reason for bringing out the book would be so they wouldn't have to recount their horrifying experiences again and again. And he's even gone on to give speeches with regards to his experiences in the house.
Earlier that day, Kathy had turned into an old woman. She had scratches across her stomach. And during that night, she actually lifted up a little bit off the bed, about 3-4 inches, and started to slide away from me, and I grabbed her before she went off the bed.
Over the years, many have speculated that the whole Amityville story was fabricated by George Lutz himself, as some have suggested that George, who reportedly was facing financial difficulties around the time of the alleged hauntings, intentionally moved into the Amityville house to profit off of the murders.
This is the house in Amityville, Long Island that the horror movie is based on. As you can see, the infamous windows have been changed and the home has gone through several owners.
After the Lutzes moved out, the house was owned by James and Barbara Cromarty, who actually changed the address from 112 Ocean Avenue to 108 Ocean Avenue with the hopes of warding off curious onlookers and stalkers, but to no avail.
Once we moved in, we changed the number, we repainted it, and we made it a beautiful part of the community again. And we really thought everything would just go away. We never dreamt what would take place here. When they came, they literally, on Christmas Eve, attacked the house. 3 cars. One car drove all over the front lawn. Another one watched for the police, and the other group, all men, about 20 to 25, I guess. The other groups just stood out on the front porch and urinated all over it on Christmas Eve.
We just hope that sooner or later we're going to knock a complete hole in this parade that's been created, and hope that we can just live in a normal life again, not have to worry about when we come home at night that there are 30 people in the yard, that maybe we'll have to call the police again, give them a break, give the neighbors a break.
Why did you come by tonight to look at this house?
To see what that book was all about and everything about the house, the way it looked, and all the things that people say about it.
Oh, we just wanted to see what it was like. I guess we just specifically came from Chicago to see it.
Well, do you believe all the stories?
Yeah, I do. They're kind of creepy. They gave me the creeps that...
Why do you believe it when the present owners say there's no truth to it at all, and they've been living here for almost 2 years?
Oh, I didn't know they had present owners. I thought it was deserted.
A man who said he was a friend of the Cromartys also came by, but insisted he not be photographed. You say a friend of yours lives here and you've been in the house. Is there any truth to all these stories that it's haunted and there are weird smells and slime and all those other things?
Nothing at all. It's all a bunch of lies.
Well, how do you feel about all these tourists coming by and the movie opening and all of this? What do you think of that?
Well, I live right down the road and it's a pain in the neck because you can't even get down the block.
Barbara Cromarty has also stated that the house is not haunted and that they've not experienced anything while living in the house.
This house is not haunted. It never was haunted. It was a money-making fraud.
It should also be noted that no strange happenings have ever been recorded by residents that have since lived in the Amityville house. George's own stepson, Christopher Quaratino, insisted that the hauntings did happen. However, he claimed that George carelessly brought them upon the family by dabbling in the occult, and then exaggerated the events for profit.
I was absolutely disgusted with what I'm seeing.
Christopher Quaratino is in a position to judge. As a boy, he fled this house with his mom and adoptive father, Kathy and George Lutz.
The only thing that they got right is that our family moved in that house and we left.
It should be noted that George Lutz also owned a company called Amityville Horror Enterprises, LLC, and that he actually sued Quaratino, his own stepson, for copyright infringement and fraud, pertaining to a future Amityville movie that was planned by George Lutz.
There was so much to it. There was a lawsuit that went on for better than 13 years. And George didn't work a regular job.
George's other stepson, Daniel Lutz, has insisted over the years that everything his parents said was the truth. And he spoke of his own experiences in the 2013 documentary, My Amityville Horror.
I didn't want to be the Amityville Horror kid. I've been running away from it, and it finally caught up to me.
However, he did admit that George was extremely controlling and both physically and verbally abusive as a stepfather, leading to many to suspect that the horrors Daniel suffered in the house were actually familial in nature rather than paranormal. Eric Winter, the director of the documentary, stated in an interview that the information given to him by Daniel Lutz during the making of this documentary was groundbreaking.
I spent 5 days in New York with Danny for the first time and was very taken back by what I was hearing, but knew that what I was hearing was something definitely, as I mentioned, groundbreaking. So
now, with regards to that, I've seen the documentary. If you haven't, take a look. There is nothing groundbreaking whatsoever in the documentary.
He could have done this 25, 30 years ago, but he didn't. And he's now coming, nearly 40 years later out of the blue to talk about it.
Now, this is pretty strange as well, because Joel Martin, who was the main journalist covering the whole Amityville saga when it happened, stated that Daniel Lutz actually approached him in the late 1980s trying to sell him the true story about what really happened with the Lutzes during that time. Martin, however, wouldn't go for it because he saw it as a money grab.
The entire family is standing there watching the garage door slam up and slam down, and the dog is hanging himself.
It should also be noted that Daniel Lutz became pretty combative when he was asked to take a polygraph test during the documentary, which, in my opinion, decreases his credibility by quite a bit, even though these things are inadmissible in court.
I won't say that I believe everything, and I'm not saying I don't believe everything. I believe that he believes what he's saying.
Taking into account the fact that this whole Amityville saga has spawned a lot of books and a lot of movies, it's pretty safe to say that this house will continue to fascinate people for decades to come. But in any case, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think that the Amityville house was really haunted? Or do you think it was a blatant hoax? And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if it's your first time on this channel, welcome, and check out some of the other videos that I have on this channel.